Hello, friends. As we continue to explore the Islamic invasions, first under the Arabs, then under the Turks, and then the Afghans, and so on and so forth. The intent of these couple of clips is essentially to break this myth of an Islamic empire over India for almost 1,000 years, which is absolutely untrue. Because if you notice, first the Arabs, within 1 year of the death of Prophet Muhammad, arrived at the borders of ancient Bharat-varsha. And then the Pratihara king Nagabhatta and his confederacy comprehensively beat them and drove them back. So badly that the Arab Muslims never again came to India for ever. It's only 300 years later that the Ghaznavis arrived. These were now the Turkic fellows. They were not Arabs anymore. And under Mahmud of Ghazni, and which we dealt in the previous episode, where again Raja Vidyadhar and of the Chandela kingdom and Raja Suheldev so comprehensively beat him and his nephew Salar Masood that for another 150 years no Islamic attacks on India. Minor skirmishes, yes, but nothing major till 150 years later, which by which time we are around in the 1170s and that kind of time. Around 1178, the Ghurid, House of Ghurids, Muhammad Ghori, turns up on the Gujarat side. Now, Ghori's ancestors, about 100 years ago, were Buddhists. They had converted because of the neighboring influences of Islam from Persia and other places. The Ghurids are there's a debate whether they are entirely Turkic, that is Central Asian Turks, or they are Pashtuns. There seems to be a mix, but either way, the jury is out on them. With more evidence, those can be figured out. But Muhammad Ghori, when I started eyeing India, he first came across Gujarat. He thought of attacking from there. And at that time in Gujarat, it was the Chalukyas who were ruling there. And there was, the minor king Mula Raja II and his the queen mother, who was his regent. She was Nike Devi. Now, Nike Devi was the queen mother, and she actually took to this battle. And she was, of course, supported again by a confederacy of other kings and Rajputs. What happened was they allowed the Ghurid forces to enter the Abu Hills. Okay, the Abu Hill passes. And this battle is known as the Battle of Kasharada or the Battle of Gadra Ghatta. And these Ghurid forces, once they were led into the pass, they closed the pass from the behind. Now the Ghurid forces were facing the entire might of the Rajput confederacy. And at that time, they were so badly routed and slaughtered that Muhammad Ghori himself was wounded and fled from the battlefield. He had a lot of difficulty along the way, but somehow he did manage to reach Ghazni. And then for 10 years, till then, he kept quiet. He never attacked Gujarat anymore again at all. But he started trying to come from the upper areas from Punjab. Now, at that time, during that time, he had many skirmishes with Prithviraj Chauhan, and it is understood that he must have lost many of those, almost all of them, because there is. I was, looking at a post from Vedavir Aryaji as per his analysis. He was talking about the archaeological artifacts with regards to minted coins found at that time, and they were in Devanagari script. Obviously, that means minted by Prithviraj Chauhan. And they had, on one side, they had Prithviraj Chauhan's name, and the other half of it saying Muhammad bin Sam. Muhammad bin Sam means Muhammad bin as Samanta. Samanta means vassal, which means that the Muhammad bin Gori had already become his vassal at that time, his Samant at that time. Which means that Muhammad Ghori's entire empire also was already under Prithviraj Chauhan, and that's why, of course, he's rightfully called as Samrat Prithviraj Chauhan. And the other side of it is Lakshmi. So any pretense that Muhammad Ghori, after he had put Prithviraj to death, he had minted these coins is absolutely bunkum, because obviously who will do that? That too in Devanagari script, having Lakshmi on it, and then with Prithviraj Chauhan in one, and then Muhammad bin being mentioned as the Samant. So obviously it is evidence clear enough. But then the other major battle that happened is the first battle of Tarain, that was in 1191 AD, which Muhammad Ghori lost again. But then within a year did attack again, and it was that battle that he won. And of course, all those details are very vividly given in the Prithviraj Raso. Once again, our historians will go by the Muslim accounts and not the Prithviraj Raso. After all, the Muslim accounts are the accounts of a victor of the battle. So obviously, they will glorify the victor. This is the folly of our historians. But nevertheless, the Prithviraj also very clearly states how Prithviraj actually put to death Muhammad Ghori when Muhammad Ghori was trying to humiliate him. And that famous, Chopai, where the bard tells him in which direction Prithviraj is, and at what distance and how many paces above the ground, so that Prithviraj was able to shoot him blindfolded when Muhammad Ghori was trying to humiliate him to see how good his aim is. And he actually gave a laugh of ha ha ha. चार बांस 24 गज अंगुल अष्ट प्रमाण ता ऊपर सुल्तान है मत चूके चौहान. So the bard is telling him the distance at which the sultan is seated, and the angle in terms of how many fingers. He's telling him the angle he needs to take in order to shoot the arrow. So he has communicated to him the distance and the angle, which is what is needed in order to be able to shoot accurately. And I think that sound and then the direction that he got, Prithviraj used it to put Muhammad Ghori to death. Of course, Prithviraj was later trampled to death under an elephant. This was the beginning of the Muslim rule for the first time in Delhi. And again, remember, Delhi doesn't mean that Delhi is the capital of the country. It is today, but not at that time. So it does not mean that because they are there, they were over the whole of India. Not at all. This is the time when Muhammad Ghori, for the first time, took charge in Delhi. So after Ghori, he was succeeded by his slave Kutubuddin Aibak. And then, of course, there were five dynasties that came after him. Most of them were either Turkic or Afghan origin, and they all rose and fell. The Mamluk dynasty, the Khilji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty, the Sayyid dynasty, and the Lodi dynasty, which, of course, ends with Babur's attack on Ibrahim Lodi. So you know that this period of roughly about 250 to 300 years, we had these 4, 5 dynasties. And you probably will not be aware that of the 35 sultans of this dynasty, 19 were assassinated, either by internal warfare, internecine rivalries, or rebels, whatever. It tells you how unstable they were. They were mostly, I mean, they were based in Delhi, but then they sometimes made forays up to Bengal, sometimes up to the Deccan, sometimes up to the Rajput areas. But then were always many times repelled and then confined again back to some of the major central areas around Delhi. So and one of these, for example, was Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and you know about his savagery. He's a very very cruel and savage fellow. He once tried to come across to Mewar, and when he came there, he was met by Raja Hamir Singh. Now, Hamir Singh again comprehensively beat him to the extent that he imprisoned him and put him in his own prison for 3 months. That's Muhammad bin Tughlaq, supposed to be some great sultan. And having stayed in prison, he then had to negotiate his freedom out in return for rupees 50 lakhs in those days. Some, I think, 100 plus war elephants, and then, of course, all those, fortresses of from Mewar onwards to all those places. And this is basically called the Battle of Singoli. This happened in 1336. And by the way, Hamir Singh is the son of Rani Padmini, the one who committed Johar against Alauddin Khilji. And Rani Padmini, when all this was happening, Hamir Singh was an infant of 1 or 2 years old at that time. He was, of course, whisked away from the fort by other Rajputs and taken to safety. And he was then raised among the Rajputs and given the training. And then he takes on the battle with Muhammad bin Tughlaq. And of course, in that whole negotiation, he wins. The Sultanate ceded all the areas of Ajmer, Ranthambore, Nagaur, and Sopore to Raja Hamir Singh. And Hamid Singh is also had an ancestor 300 years ago in the first battle against the Arabs when Nagabhatta Confederacy was fighting. One of his ancestors was Bappa Rawal. Bappa Rawal had become famous for his legendary feats on the battlefield. And on his way back, Bappa Rawal, what he did was, at every 100 kilometers, he created a military post with about 1,000 troops. And one such military post is Rawalpindi. Today, Rawalpindi is the capital of Pakistan and is named after Bappa Rawal. So, the Pakistanis named their missiles after Ghori, and the Ghori who lost more than 20 battles to Prithviraj Chauhan. Maybe he won one. He lost to Naiki Devi badly, injured and ran away. And yet the capital is Bappa Rawal, who actually happens to be their ancestor, not Muhammad Ghori. But then these people in their lost wisdom think of Muhammad Ghori as one of their ancestors, unless he was an Afghan, pure and pure. But he was not. He's probably having a lot of Turkish blood in him, so he was obviously not their ancestor. Neither the ancestor of any people in India. These are not the ancestors of any Indian, whatever our faith may be. Our ancestors, immaterial of our faith, are the people like Bappa Rawal, Hamir Singh. These are our ancestors. So that was a post created by Bappa Rawal, named after him, Rawalpindi in Pakistan. And then we go on that even Muhammad bin Tughlaq, when he also tried to go towards the Deccan, even there he was met by another king in the south. And this man was Musunuri Naik, and he also once again comprehensively defeated him, so that he went back to the capital. That was around 1336 AD. Then, of course, the Tughlaq dynasty finally suffered a blow from Timur. If you know Timur, again, cruelty is their hallmark. So Timur was the one who sacked Moscow. Muscovy at that time was a nascent city civilization, which the Russians first claim as almost their beginnings. But then when Timur ransacked it, he killed 24,000 people in a day, and he put everything to fire. That civilization was finished as it is, but they had to start all over again. That is what Timur did. He also came then, the same Timur, who now comes to Delhi, and he has also sacked Delhi. But then that is the story of the Sultanates, and we'll talk more about this and then into the Mughals as we get to the next episodes. Thank you once again, friends, for listening. We'll enjoy this journey of discovery. We will break a lot of myths. Thank you for being with me.